How's it going, everybody? I am AV Obsessed, and if you're watching this video on my channel, that means that you probably are too. And today I'm going to be doing my review of the SVS 3000 Micro Revolution subwoofer. So the 3000 Micro Revolution is sort of an upgrade from the original SVS 3000 Micro, which had dual 8-inch side firing woofers, and I believe it had an 800 watt RMS amplifier with, I believe, 3000 watts peak. Now, the 3000 Micro Revolution is upgraded to dual 9-inch force canceling opposing woofer drivers, which are both active. There's no passive radiator on here. And then the amplifier that kind of is interesting because it goes all the way up and down the back and then wraps around the bottom of the cabinet slightly. So it goes from all the way from about a 1/4 inch away from the top of the cabinet all the way down and wraps around to the bottom of the cabinet, which is really interesting. But that amp is now a 1200 watt RMS, 4000 watt peak amplifier to drive the dual active 9-inch woofers, which is pretty impressive in such a small package. And when I say small package, it's not incredibly tiny. It's not like a Rel T0, which is, I always call that thing baby's first subwoofer because it's so small. But we're talking with the feet and the grills. This thing stands at 10.8 inches tall, and then it's 11.8 inch or 11.9 wide and 10.9 deep. So we're talking less than 1 cubic foot of a subwoofer cabinet, and so it's not incredibly tiny, like I said, but it's fairly small. You'd be able to fit it into most areas where you would possibly want to put a subwoofer. And also, obviously, I believe that this thing would completely destroy that Rel T0 that I mentioned earlier. But if there is interest in it, I'm pretty sure I can get my hands on a Rel T0 pretty easily. So if you guys want to see a comparison review between this and that little baby Rel, make sure that you like and subscribe and post in the comments that you want to see that. But that's getting a little bit off topic. Going over the connectivity on this subwoofer, I am also pretty happy to see the XLR inputs. It doesn't have the XLR loop outs that the bigger subwoofers like my SP5000 have, but it's nice that it still has the XLR inputs because I run XLR from my Macintosh C55 preamp into my subwoofers, and then RCA comes from the receiver into the subwoofer as well. So whether I only have the Macintosh preamp and amp on listening to music, or whether I have the full system on, I'm getting subwoofer bass either way. So yeah, I'm gonna start from the bottom. You've got the full-size C13, you got your rocker switch for power, you got your left and right XLR, you've got left and right RCA in, and then the loop out for the RCAs, and then you've got an IR in, and you've got the 12-volt trigger in, which is another thing that I'm super happy to see on a smaller sub like this. A lot of smaller and less expensive subwoofers, they don't do the 12-volt trigger input, so you're just relying on like the built-in auto on-off function where it's just signal sensing, but I massively prefer triggers. And then you've got the buttons for adjusting volume and stuff like that on the little tiny screen on the back of the unit. But I've never used these buttons because I always just use the massively useful and awesome SVS app. So for this review, which I have to say thank you to Nick from SVS for sending out this unit for review, along with the calibration microphone, which I'll get into a little bit later. I basically set it up in my living room, replacing one of my SB5000s. So I had on the left side of the room, I still had one SB5000, and on the right side of the room, I had the 3000 micro here. And then for a while, I was running it with the left SB5000 turned off. So it was just this subwoofer. And honestly, for the size of my room and in comparison to the towers that this thing was, working to fill the bottom end in for, I was pretty impressed by the output capabilities of this subwoofer. One thing that I did find interesting, and I am wondering if it's just the nature of the dual opposed woofers, without having the active driver on the front of the speaker, you do get a little bit of an interesting, almost detached feel to the bass. It's kind of like bass is just filling your room, but I mean, I guess technically it's considered a good thing, obviously, that you're not hearing any kind of rattling coming from the subwoofer because of the fact that it's dual 9-inch drivers that are doing the exact same thing. They're essentially going like this. They're force canceling any vibrations that would be coming from the cabinet and getting transferred from the cabinet into your floor and into the structure of your house. And those are, a lot of the time, those are the things that make it so you can locate where the bass is coming from more easily with a conventional subwoofer. This thing, you can put your hand on top of it and basically not hear or not feel any vibrations at all, even when it's sitting there pounding away, like if you're playing some pretty bass-heavy music, which is super cool. It's the first time I've had a dual opposed subwoofer like this. But I do feel like I did slightly miss a little bit of that kick in the chest feeling that you can get from a big, powerful, forward-firing subwoofer like the SB5000. You don't really feel that aspect of the bass from this subwoofer, which I found pretty interesting. But it does play very, very loud and very cleanly for being such a small subwoofer, which I found really impressive. So after listening to this subwoofer in my living room for a couple of weeks, I finally decided to pull out the Mini DSP UMic 2 and open up REW and take some measurements. Essentially, I had the setup where this thing was sitting exactly where the right SB5000 in the room was. The left SB5000 was turned off. Ran some frequency response sweeps from 10 Hertz to 200 Hertz at reference volumes of 75, 85, and 95 decibels, and did it with a fresh factory reset on the subwoofer, and then also I ran it after running the SVS Auto EQ room calibration using the microphone that SVS makes for running that software on the subwoofer. So this is the box that it comes in. This is what the microphone actually looks like. It looks fairly similar, but it's a little bit bigger and higher quality than what would come with an AV receiver. And it does terminate in a 3.5 millimeter, and then they give you an adapter that takes 3.5 mil and converts it into USB-C. And then also they give you a lightning adapter as well if you have an older iPhone. And then you just run the SVS Auto EQ room calibration on your phone, and you could see the difference that it makes here. So I'm gonna have both graphs up here. No room calibration and SVS Auto EQ room calibration. And they're both pretty impressive, honestly. For such a small subwoofer, being able to hit the lower 30s at 95 decibels is impressive, honestly. Now at 95 decibels from about 25 to 35 dB, you can see there is some compression, meaning that the line for between 85 and 95 decibels or between 25 and 35 hertz, the lines of those two graphs are a lot closer together because of the fact that it can't hit 95 decibels at 25, 30 hertz. And so the DSP and, you know, things like that, protection circuitry within the subwoofer are essentially just protecting it by bringing down those ultra low frequencies at those ultra high decibel levels to protect the subwoofer and make sure that you don't blow it up, essentially. But the amount of bass that you can get out of such a small package is super impressive, and you can see the pretty like noticeable difference that the auto EQ room calibration made. It brought up a dip that I have at about, I think it's just below 50 hertz, and it brought down a peak that I have at about 70 hertz, making the frequency response of the subwoofer a lot smoother. So I highly recommend, if you have any of the newer SVS subwoofers that support it, run the auto EQ room calibration. It takes 5 minutes and makes your subwoofer sound a lot better and cleaner. And then also, just for fun, I decided to throw in the measurements for my SB5000, which you could see obviously has like full output all the way down to 10 hertz, even at, you know, 75, 85, and 95 decibels. So that is what buying a much larger subwoofer that costs twice as much gets you. Seems pretty obvious though. So that is what I think of the SVS 3000 Micro Revolution subwoofer. Gets a very strong recommendation from me. One thing I do also think is kind of interesting is the fact that it's only available in the gloss black or the gloss white. Most of SVS speakers are also available with a black oak veneer. I'm kind of surprised they don't offer that as an option on this one. I feel like that might be a deal breaker for some buyers. I know some people are very opposed to the glossy finishes. I love the glossy finishes, so it doesn't mean it's not a negative for me in any way, but yeah, for some people that might be an issue, so that's kind of interesting. But other than that, my only gripe with this thing, like I said earlier in the video, is the fact that the initial kick that you feel from a forward-firing speaker or a forward-firing subwoofer in a larger cabinet, you don't really get that from this thing because of the dual opposed drivers, which actually, you know, it kind of makes me want to check out some of the other subwoofers out there that have dual opposed drivers, like the KEF KC92. I know Arendal makes dual side firing subwoofers, and so does Bowers & Wilkins actually, so it'd be super cool if I could check out some of those and see if I get that same, or I should say, see if I'm missing that same sensation from those. But yeah, this thing, for its size and honestly its price, like it's $1,000 subwoofer, it's really impressive what this thing can do in this size and price range, I guess I should say. So yeah, strongly recommended if you're trying to build a kind of a stealthy home theater where you're gonna hide the majority of your components, like wall mount speakers, and try to hide the subwoofers. I would definitely say this is going to be one of your best options if you're trying to build a home theater system like that, like, you know, in a living room or something like that, especially if you're a more design focused first kind of person and you want the room to look great first and then sound great second. I would definitely consider going with one or maybe even two of these and hiding them somewhere in the room, like in corners behind furniture and stuff like that. So yeah, highly recommended. Super awesome little subwoofer. Thank you again for sending this thing out to me, SVS. I should say Nick from SVS. And yeah, if you guys like this video, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Next week, I'm going to be traveling to Denver to go to CEDIA. So if you guys see me there, then you can say hi. And if you're buying anything, I believe these guys are on Amazon, so if they are, I'm going to have an Amazon affiliate link, and then I'll also put a generic affiliate link. If you're buying anything else and you want to help to support the channel, you could use that. But most importantly, make sure you like and subscribe and click the bell notification so you're notified that when my new videos come out, and try to spread this information, this video around on hi-fi forums and stuff like that. And I will see you guys in the next video, which will be from CEDIA.